but he won't tell me why.
I'm not exactly the hunting type. I don't think I could actually kill.
I think you'd be surprised what you can do.
Preseration is the story of a woman, her husband, and her brother-in-law leaving the chaos of their lives behind as they venture into the woods for a bit of relaxation and good old-fashioned deer hunting. But when they wake up the next morning to find all their food, gear, and weapons missing, including the tent they slept in, and inexplicably without having disturbed their sleep, the trio soon discover that they've been targeted by a group of masked lunatics. I'm Cinematico Magnifico of AmoralCrackpot.com, and welcome to the Nightly Chill. From the twisted mind of writer-director Christopher Denham, Preseration is about as unoriginal as these sorts of movies come, almost as if it were checking off item after item from a predetermined checklist of horror cliches that must be met every few minutes for fear of the movie self-destructing. But despite this desire to live down to expectations, it somehow manages to simultaneously tease some impressive character work in both its protagonists and antagonists that elevates it above similar offerings. Unfortunately, this is one of those movies that is frustrating not because it's bad. In fact, Preseration is surprisingly enjoyable in spite of its faults, but it is frustrating because it could have been impressively good. I can't quite decide if this is a shortcoming on the part of the director, or if it speaks to his talents for having made something so interesting from such a half-baked script. Whereas so many of these low-budget horror films are quick to present some poorly defined group of stock characters before dispatching them en masse, Preseration dedicates a lot of time, perhaps not enough, though far more than others, to fleshing out characters that initially feel as trite as the movie's premise. There are layers to these characters that might feel more at home in a more serious drama than yet another horror movie centered on mass killers hacking away at unsuspecting and generally defenseless victims. Of course, much of the credit has to go to the actors, including Pablo Schreiber, an actor perhaps better known as Pornstache from Netflix's Orange is the New Black. Schreiber digs into his role as the aforementioned brother-in-law, a man suffering from PTSD following his time in the military. Schreiber and company do magic with the lean material given to them, and it comes across in every scene. Even when the actors in those scenes are covered in masks, young, and must resort to purely physical acting, the likes of which I haven't seen done so well in a horror movie since Kane Hodder took over the role of Jason Voorhees in the later entries of the Friday the 13th franchise. That said, these strong character moments and performances are cut short far too often, as the movie is fiercely dedicated to its 90-minute runtime. While the movie isn't necessarily poorly paced in any real way, the fact that so much character work was left over only to still turn it into such typical horror fare is a shame. Perhaps if it were afforded a full 2 hours, Preseration might have had the time necessary to reach its full potential. But as it is, all we're left with is a decent, competent horror movie that is sure to leave its audience asking, what if? You can follow Amoral Crackpot on Facebook and Twitter, and also be sure to leave any questions, comments, and suggestions for future reviews in the comments section below, and maybe discuss today's movie at greater length. Tomorrow night, we'll be taking a look at The Man Who Was Death, the pilot episode of HBO's classic TV series, Tales from the Crypt. But until then, I'm gonna make like a tree and get out of here.